Hello, this is Alex from cables.gl. I want to talk about Switch Trigger, but also the friends of Switch Trigger, which are a bunch of new ops. Well, okay, they're not that new, but we didn't really talk about them, so they're sort of new. And I want to use them a bit more, and hopefully you'll also use them a bit more because it's a super handy concept. And we'll cover what we kind of are used to with Switch Trigger, then maybe introduce some of these and just see how to use them. And after that, maybe we'll maybe like introduce or hint at the other things I want to show you that are sort of related because once we get the concept of this, you might think, what about the opposite way of doing this stuff? But anyway, so how does it work? Switch Trigger takes a bunch of triggers, right? So things coming out of your main loop. So for example, from this Fong material, we'll plug in it into our like first choice trigger index 0, and then this will go to our cube. All right, that's cool. So let's maybe put down a basic material and then maybe give it like a I don't know, color area. And don't know how it's going to look, but we're just going to plug it into this other option, right? So now we have these two material setups. Not that beautiful. I just want to add a sequence there so it's a bit better. Right now I'm holding Shift Alt and I'm clicking with the right mouse button on the cable and then just lifting it up and placing it. Kind of handy actually. Have I ever talked about that before? So Shift Alt, hold this end, put it down, and then if I want to place something here or place it somewhere else on this end, I move my mouse all the way to the end, Shift Alt, and then pick up this end. Anyway, tangent. So now we have two materials. The Fong one is visible on our cube, right? I can change the color. This is what the cube is getting. Great. And that's Fresnel on the Fong as well. That's why the green thing is there. Kind of freaked me out for a sec. So switch trigger. Let's say we have some setup to switch these indexes or indices, and we can switch between our materials. So maybe you have a sidebar or some sort of condition trigger to go from 0 to whatever, and then 5, 6, 7, and then you choose all these different choices. That's great. So for example, what if I want a material that has a different texture on my cube, right? I would basically have to, let's just try this. So basic would get maybe like a noise texture and maybe make it a bit more visible. So I'll do like 4x4, and we have this kind of messy, colorful noise on our choice number 2, which is index 1. And then it's got this funky color area for whatever reason. Maybe make it smaller. Yeah, so that's our choice number 2. So I want another material with a different texture. What do I have to do? Do I have to create another setup like this? So I just selected it and copy pasted it, and then maybe plug in this into my first choice, and then maybe a different material texture for this basic, and do it this way. So see, now I have, well, I'll remove this color area so it's clear. It's our first choice. We have this one, and then if I go to this one, choice number 2, I have these two materials with different textures. But that seems a little bit overkill, right? Because now we can use all these other cool operators for, certain things like this, where you want a material, but you just want to change the texture in it. Or you have maybe an array for your mesh instancer. You don't want to use a switch trigger to like recreate a whole different setup for your maybe spherical point cloud or something like that. You just want to switch the array. So once you have an idea of a project where you know what you're going to be switching, you definitely should take a look at these newer operators that allow you to switch just parts of your patch. So what I was demonstrating here was, yeah, okay, we can have two materials with different textures. But in a more compact setup, I guess, is we have the one basic material going into a cube, right? And then we have the switch textures that is getting two different textures into our like amount of choices. And just real quick tangent, this default texture is transparent. So for example, if I go to a choice that doesn't have any texture plugged into here, right? This operator has this switch here. Let's make this a bit wider. So it's called default texture transparent, right? So if there is a selection made, for example, number 5, right? This thing will be transparent or not, right? So that's pretty much the only, like I mentioned before, the only extra choice in all these from this group of operators, because every other one is basically choices and then an index selection for that choice, except for this texture one. And that's what it does. So you can either have a transparent texture or not a transparent, kind of like weird default missing texture striped choice there. That's pretty much it. Okay, tangent over. So we're back to our selection of textures. One material going into our cube, and then we're switching textures with this index number. Pretty sweet, right? So we don't have to recreate that whole setup of different materials and add different textures to them. What else? I guess that's pretty much it. Definitely leave some comments below if you want me to cover a specific use case, for example, for something like this. You know, I'm really interested about this one actually, because I do remember some operators that strictly take a file and they don't allow me to like animate things. I think on my spare time, I'm gonna try to plug this thing in. And by the way, what does it do? Switch files. So it's actually pretty handy. You can, of course, do something like, you know, if you have an operator that comes out from a file you uploaded, for example, I have in my library, you know, some textures, and then when I drag it out into my editor field, I get a texture operator with a texture output. That's great. But you can also use this file selection, right? So I can maybe go into here, and then it just goes into my library, and then I can select the beach as one of my file choices, right? So now it's kind of compact. So now I can maybe plug in a texture operator. Texture operator. Yeah. Yeah, so kind of interesting. So it's like a better, maybe optimal way of keeping all of your stuff organized, so you know that you've uploaded a bunch of files into your library or into your project, and you want to use those specifically, and then just have one texture operator and then connect that to something else. But yeah, switch file, super handy actually. Really want to try that out. Switch object, it could be geometry objects, JSON, stuff like that. Switch array, of course, arrays. And it doesn't matter what length they are. They can all be completely different arrays, and whatever one you select with the index that comes out. Switch string, put in your string, plug in a string, and then switch through those. Number switcher, cool. And then, of course, switch textures, which we looked at. Now, as an outro, let's say this is what I had an issue with. Okay, that's great. If I have a bunch of choices and then I want to connect that to like a single cube. So I have a bunch of materials that go into a single cube, or a bunch of textures that go into a single material. But what if I want to now select to what geometry this goes to, for example, right? So I'll have like maybe a flatter cube. Wait, I edited the wrong one. So this one. I have like a flat plane or something, then maybe a sphere. So I like this material, right? And then I switch maybe to this one. And now I want to have a different shape. Do I have to somehow like recreate all this to use a switch? Actually, no, because there's kind of a similar operator family, I want to say, like this, but it's like flipped up, like upside down, I guess. So you have one input and then many outputs. So these ones are called route, I don't know, route operators. So route trigger, like that. So we can plug this into here, and then we also have a switch value or like the index of which output port will go to. So I think this one is triggered right now, and then we plug in the other flattened cube and then the sphere, and then here we can select 1. Oh, there's our flattened one, and then 2, there's our sphere. So that's an awesome other family, but we can cover it later. But actually, I think that should suffice it. All right, bye.